Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you all of the books that I read in September. If you hear weird noises, it is probably the cat, but I also just had like a supernatural experience, so maybe it's not the cat. We'll never know. So let's get into the 10 books that I have read, and I think I will add one more book at the end that I finished right in the beginning of October, but I read most of it in September, so I just want to throw it in here as well. So the first book I finished in September was a library read, and that was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. This is a book that follows different main characters. So you have like a short story setup where we follow a different person in each chapter. Overall, it is 12 different people that we're looking at, and this is an exploration of being Black in Great Britain, and it looks at very different times as well. So we're basically jumping through the generations, but then also jumping through like socioeconomic backgrounds and stuff like that. There's quite a diverse cast of women that we're looking at mostly. And so this one I decided to give 3.5 stars. I think if you're really into literary fiction, this is probably right up your alley. I just had a little bit of an issue keeping track of all the characters because you have the 12 like main characters, but then obviously in all of these stories you have side characters as well, and sometimes they overlap, so you're supposed to know who that person is in this story and then in that story, and then at the end it is all brought together in a way, and I was just a little bit overwhelmed, to be honest. And then also some of the plot points weren't my favorite. There is quite a lot of rape in one part of the book that I felt a little bit uncomfortable reading about in such detail. And yeah, overall I would say if you're interested, try the book, but it wasn't my personal favorite. Then the next book I finished was Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. Now this is a book that I picked up basically on a whim. I did this little video experiment where I just went book shopping and I decided to buy one book and then do a reading vlog about it all in one video. So yeah, Godkiller is a fantasy book. It's the first in a series, which usually I don't like doing. I like to wait until the series is complete. But I think with this one we do get enough of an arc and closure at the end that you could read it as a standalone. We are following a woman who is a god killer, which means that she goes around looking for gods when they're just being created and still quite weak, and then she kills them. And the reason for that is that in this world there was a huge war between the gods. There is like old gods and new gods, and the old gods kind of got jealous that the new gods got more and more power, and so they tried to use the people in their war against each other. So it was a huge horrible thing, and so now basically religion is forbidden so that there is no more gods created. And I really enjoyed this. This is compared to The Witcher quite a lot. I have not read or played or watched The Witcher, so this was my kind of first experience with a story like that, where we basically have this god killer and she meets a young girl who is connected to a god, and she can't kill the god because that would probably kill the girl as well. And so they are starting traveling together to kind of find a solution for this connection. And then they also meet a knight who has now stopped being a knight and started being a baker, but he is pulled back into the political machinations of this world. And yeah, they form a group and travel together and have an adventure. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was so much fun. I love these characters, and I think because this book is so short, the amount of character work that the author manages to do while there is quite a lot of action was really cool. Like, I'm usually not a person who likes very action-focused books, but this one worked for me. So in the end, I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I'm very excited to get to the sequel. And the next book I finished was Grave Secrets by Katie Reichs. This is the 5th Temperance Brennan novel. This is the series that inspired the TV show Bones, even though it is very, very different. We're still following a woman called Temperance Brennan, and she is a forensic anthropologist, but in this one she is a very different character. She has been married before, she has a daughter who is already a grown-up person, and she works in the US and Canada, and she helps the police solve murders, but she's also still like working just in a lab and at a university. So we get this kind of like academic side to her character as well, which I really enjoy because I work in academia, so that just makes me kind of sympathize with her a lot more. And in this 5th installment, she is in Guatemala, I think. Yes. And she's trying to help excavate victims of kind of a genocide that happened up until the 90s in Guatemala. And while she's there, she gets sucked into this police investigation into a possible serial killer because they're looking at multiple missing girls. And yeah, I like this one. I always have this kind of like weird nostalgia with these books. I think that for these kind of like crime thrillers, they are quite different because the main character is just not your typical crime thriller main character, and that's what I enjoy about these books. I just like getting the more scientific and academic look at this job. And so in the end I gave this one 4 stars, very solid. I just really like the series, and I already tried to order the next copy so I can read it next year, but because we don't have Book Depository anymore, it's very hard to get these covers in Germany. So we'll see whether I will actually ever receive book 6. Then the next book I finished was my audiobook, The Bone-Short War by Andrea Stewart. This is the last book in the Drowning Empire series, and this one is the conclusion, obviously, as I just said. And in this series we're following mainly 2 characters. We're following the daughter of the emperor, which is the namesake of the first book, The Bone-Short Daughter, and we are following a smuggler called Jovis. The daughter of the emperor is called Lynn. And this is about these 2 characters in this world where basically we have these like islands, and they're all like one empire, and there is an emperor who has as the only person bone shard magic, and he can use bone shards to animate dead objects. And he has basically these like creatures run the empire, and his daughter is trying to prove to him that she is capable of that magic as well, so that she can be the heir to the empire. And Jovis is a man who, even though he's not like actively trying to always do the right thing, he gets sucked into these like things all the time. And so now he is a smuggler who is stealing kids away from these procedures where their bones are taken, because these bones are used for the like bone shard creatures, and when they are used for a very long time to animate these creatures, the person the bone was taken from starts getting sick and die because it sucks the life out of them basically. And so a lot of people don't want that for their children, so Jovis smuggles them away. And that's just the beginning of the story. Obviously by the 3rd book we're just way ahead. And I did overall enjoy the series, and I did enjoy the conclusion. But I must say that overall it was just a little bit of a disappointment, because I thought this would be a new favorite and it was so hyped, and I just didn't feel that. I think it's solid, I think it's fine. I think if you're into these kind of island fantasies, definitely read it, but it was not the like super hype series that I wanted it to be. So in the end, I gave this book 4 stars as well. And there will be a separate reading vlog where I talk in depth about the series. And so now we're pretty solidly into my disappointment era, because the next book I finished was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby von Pelt. This is the German edition I got as a gift. And unfortunately, I was quite disappointed with this book. We are following our main character, do I know her name? Tova. And Tova is an older lady, and she is a cleaner in the aquarium, where we also have an octopus called Marcellus. And then we also have a different main character that we're following, who is a guy in his 30s. And at the beginning, we don't really know why we're following him as well, but it becomes apparent throughout the book. But yeah, this was a big disappointment. The guy was so whiny. He was such a man-child. It was unbelievable. I was so annoyed with this character. You can't even imagine. And so yeah, this book just wasn't what I wanted it to be. I thought it would be more about the octopus. And we do get chapters from his point of view, but I just didn't find them convincing. If I think about what an octopus might think, it's not this, to be honest. Why would he care? And so yeah, this is kind of like a feel-good kind of story where everything in the end just fits together perfectly. But it just didn't work for me because of the characters. That was very unfortunate. And so in the end, I gave it 3 stars. So now this next book I can't really call a disappointment, because I didn't really expect anything great from it. This was also a gift. My grandma gave me this. This is a German book called Heimat, deine, Sünder by Horst, Lapp. This is a book about a man who was born during the Second World War, right at the border between Germany and France. And so his family had to flee inland when the war came to a close. And then we follow his life story up until the point where he meets his wife. And so this is a story about kind of the power of knowledge, how important it is to have an education. If you want something like that, I would recommend the book Educated. This one was fine. In the beginning, I had a little bit of an issue because this author portrays himself as the anti-Nazi kid. And I just always find these narratives a little bit suspicious because, yeah, I think looking at it from today's perspective, we would have all been anti-Nazi kids, right? But yeah, I think this is an interesting story, but it's also a very tragic one. There's a lot of very horrible things happening, and our main character is just not very smart. And he doesn't have an education. He just doesn't really understand how the world works in a lot of ways. And so things keep happening to him, and you can't really help him because he just doesn't understand, and it's just very painful to read in a way. And so this book also gave me like very negative feelings overall, which is not the fault of the author, but just a reminder that the world wasn't that great right after the World War in Germany. So I gave this one 2.5 stars in the end. I really did not like the writing style. It was really not great, but yeah, I read it. Then on the same day, I also finished my next audiobook, and that was In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I read this one for the year-long magical readathon because I needed a dark academia. In this one, we are following a female main character who is going back to her elitist school. Now, what was I about to say? I forgot. I had a very bad migraine, so my brain is just not working right. I'm sorry. She's going back to her prestigious, that was the word, her prestigious college for a 10-year class reunion. And she was part of this like very infamous group of friends, and one of those friends died before they graduated. And so they come back together, and the little brother of the girl who died now wants them to face their secrets to figure out who killed his sister. And so we have a lot of like secrets revealed. Some of these secrets involve people being forced to come out, so keep that in mind if you want to read this book. But overall, I did enjoy it. I think that it is quite a bit of setup. It takes quite a while before it gets going. I was quite surprised with that, to be honest. But once it gets going, I think that the reveals are done quite well. I really like the pacing, the way that it all unfolds. We have a duo timeline where we follow this time of the class reunion, but then we always jump back to their time when they were students. So we get a look into just their younger selves and what was going on. And I was really okay with the solution. I thought it made sense. I thought it was very interesting how the author managed to give every one of those friends some kind of a motive to kill the girl. I really enjoyed that. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's a solid read. Then another book that luckily was not a disappointment. This is another German book called Radikale Zärtlichkeit. And the little subtitle is Why Love is Political. This is written by Şeyda, who is a German author but of Turkish descent, so her family came from Turkey. And I really enjoyed this book. This is a look at romance and love and how this is connected to capitalism, to the patriarchy, and just the world we live in, and the question whether real love is possible within the confines of our society. And so I really enjoyed this. I think especially her notes on this kind of like the whiteness of love, I would say, and how, for example, now it's kind of a trend to be in open relationships and to be non-monogamous, but how this is perceived so differently for like the hipster white people and then people of color, where it is linked to racist stereotypes. I thought that was very interesting and something that I had honestly never considered before, which is my white privilege talking. So I thought that was very interesting, and there were a lot of points in here that I enjoyed reading about. There at the beginning there is quite a bit about philosophy and how different philosophical thoughts shaped what we perceive as love today, and just like romantic love and how this is put above all other love and stuff like that. So overall really enjoyed this. I think that the beginning is a bit stronger and then it kind of fizzled out for me, so in the end I gave this one 4 stars as well. Okay, I just realized that I forgot a book in the middle there, but we're going back to the disappointments and we're talking about The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. This is one of those books where a character dies at the beginning of the book and then he experienced something that is supposed to give his life meaning. And in this case, he is supposed to meet 5 people that somehow explain his life to him so that he finally understands why he was there and why it makes sense. And unfortunately, this was a big disappointment for me. I thought that I just did not like the overall message of this. This is a kind of spoiler, but the meaning of his life is that he saves a little white girl when he is an old man from an accident, and this absolves in the end that he killed a little girl of color when he was a young man. And that's just the point where I was like, no. And honestly, already on his way there were quite a couple of things that I did not enjoy. First of all, he's an old man. All the important people in his life, apart from the little girl he killed, are men, and his wife. But that was just so antiquated love kind of thing. No, I did not like that. And then we have the whole thing with his father, where basically he's told that his father was actually a great guy because he saved his best friend after that best friend tried to rape his wife. And I was like, I'm getting out of here. Like, no. I gave this book 2 stars. I think the writing is quite good and it's very short and quick to read, but would not recommend. I also did a whole reading vlog for this one. It was my scavenger hunt. I was a little bit sad because the video was so fun, but then the book wasn't. But that's how it goes sometimes. And so the last book I actually finished in September was a German book as well. This is Die Nacht, der Könige by Stefan Beuse. I found this one in a little free library without the dust jacket, without any information, and so I went in blind. Again, big disappointment. This is a thriller where we're following a main character who works in advertisement, and he is working while his wife and kids are already on holiday, but he has to do this like one big job and then he can go join them. And so we are following him traveling to the kind of boss for this one big job with his female colleague. Already a lot of like weird male gazy vibes until that point. And then this boss guy has a very weird assistant and stuff gets very weird after that. But there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of like questionable consent kind of sex. It's very male gazy, very weird, and I have no idea what I was supposed to gain from it in the end. So I gave this one 2 stars as well. And then the last book I wanted to quickly mention right at the end here, because as I said, I just finished it at the beginning of October and I kind of want to get it out of the way before like all the spooky reads. And that would be American Mermaid by Julia Langbein. This is it was supposed to be spooky. It's kind of like a mixture of literary fiction and horror, but really don't expect any horror from this. It was such a disappointment as well. We are following a woman who is a teacher, but she writes a book and the book gets very popular. It's called American Mermaid. And so now she's offered to make it into a movie and we're following her working on the movie script with 2 like LA bros, and they want to make the mermaid sexy and they want explosions and like action movie. And this book actually is kind of like a feminist text, and the mermaid is not interested in sex or romantic relationships at all, and so there's a lot of things clashing here. Unfortunately, I was very disappointed with the way this book was actually done. We do have a story in a story here because we do get excerpts from the book, which were the best part of this book, honestly. I did not like the whole screenwriting thing. I thought we would look at the production of the movie when they're actually doing it, but we never get to this point. It's only about the script and it was so boring. We follow our main character to so many boring rich people parties and I just couldn't care less. The description says that mysterious things start going wrong. There's nothing. There's nothing mysterious happening at all. It was very boring, to be honest, and it was so sad because I think the author really tried to do something there, but the execution did not work. I think this is an interesting book for asexual people to read, because on the one hand she's trying to do something there, but on the other hand there are some things being said that are so triggering. I don't know. I gave it 3 stars and I would not recommend. I was so sad about this one. So that's it for this wrap up. Let me know what your favorite book of September was. I would love to hear about that. Leave a like and I will talk to you soon. Bye.